The three most important days in Christianity have been called the Great Triduum, and in this video we will look at what these 3 days are and what they mean. The Great Triduum celebrates and remembers 3 days from Thursday night of Holy Week, Maundy Thursday at the Last Supper, to Sunday morning. That were one, and these 3 days were one continuous act of worship, from Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, all the way to Resurrection Sunday morning. And we got to keep in mind here that the reason it begins on Thursday night and concludes on Sunday morning is because the Jewish day began at sundown. So Thursday night actually began Friday in Jewish custom. The day began at sundown, and when the sun rose, that was kind of the middle part of the day. So Thursday night is the first day, and then the second day is Friday night. Third day is Sunday night, or Saturday night, and Sunday morning is actually the end of the third day. So the celebration is seen as one continuous act of worship. It's one celebration of one event. And the Triduum, it goes all the way back to Augustine, one of the most influential theologians in Christianity. So let's look at this in more detail. What are the 3 days, and what happened on those 3 days? So you have Holy or Maundy Thursday, and on that day, the day started with the evening started with the Lord's Supper, and it was a special thanks and celebration for the institution and the ordinance. It was a special Lord's Supper communion meal because they remembered that they gave thanks for the fact that they could have communion and have this celebration, this ordinance to remember the Lord at all. And then the service concluded with washing of feet. That was a very customary action, recreating the events of that Last Supper and the last meal with the disciples that Jesus had. And then afterwards, they would strip the church of everything. They would remove all the decor, all the decorations, anything to make the church as bare as possible. And then they would put a veil. If there was a cross in the sanctuary, they would put a veil over the cross as a way of mourning what was to come. And then they would turn out the lights. At the end of the service, during the service, there would only be enough light to celebrate the darkness that was coming over the world in the crucifixion of Jesus. They would turn out the lights, and there would only be enough light for people to actually see, to walk around and to see where they were going. So then there's Good Friday. And on Good Friday, they would celebrate with the service of the Word. They would have a service with singing, and a basic worship service where they would share the verses of the crucifixion. And then they would have solemn intercessions and prayers. And the reason they focused this day so much on intercession, that was kind of the key act in remembering Good Friday, was praying and interceding. And the main reason they did that is because they saw the act of Jesus Christ, the passion of Christ, as an act of intercession on our behalf. Since Christ interceded for us on the cross, we should celebrate this day by also interceding for others on their behalf as well. So that was a key focus on Good Friday. But then they also had this part of the day called the Adoration of the Cross. And essentially at the very end of the day, they would bring a large cross, and they would carry it forth in complete silence. They would bring it in, and then verses were read on human sinfulness, and then people would reflect on their own sinfulness, and in silence all this happened. And then people would leave in complete silence. And then we move into the third day, where they had Easter. On Saturday night, they would have Easter Vigil all the way into to the morning of the third day, which was Sunday morning when the resurrection happened. So with Easter Vigil, they would open before dawn. They would have a night-long type of event, but then kind of like our sunrise services that happened oftentimes before dawn, Easter Vigil would open before dawn, and they would focus on the darkness and focus on their sin, and then they would celebrate as light broke through. And light would come into the world, and they remembered that, and they celebrated that as a way of the resurrection coming into the world as well. And various passages were read, and there were moving anthems, very powerful, moving songs of real richness and depth were sung, and passages, and it was a real celebration on Sunday. And then they would also unveil the cross. The cross had been veiled and covered with a veil from the prior 2 days, and on the third day the cross would be unveiled as a way of celebrating that death is no more, that Christ is risen, He is alive, He has been resurrected. Then they would have then they would focus on baptism, the service of water. New Christians who had been preparing, to receive baptism throughout the days and the weeks leading up to this would be baptized. They would celebrate the new life that we have in Christ by baptizing, symbolically showing through baptism the new life that people have in Jesus Christ through baptism. And then they would have communion, and they would share this, a celebratory communion meal to where we would share together. And the communion symbolized this, the new life that we have in Christ, how we have the bread of life in us, and how this new life indwells us and lives in us, and it's something that we can celebrate. So these were three tremendous days, and three of the most important days of all of Christianity, and they were called the Great Triduum. And hopefully now we have a better context for understanding Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and resurrection and Jesus' resurrection day.